What's gonna do? When the end, W-O-O destroys you.
Anything less would be civilized.
Yo, what is up, everybody? Friends, fellow wisdom seekers, fellow truth seekers, welcome to the brave new world order, straight out the dungeons of podcasting. I am Brandon St. One. Thank you all so much for joining the brave new world order for this episode as we swan dive headfirst into the abyss that is the Book of Enoch, the Watchers, and Mount Hermon. The Book of Enoch tells the story of the Watchers, angels that were in heaven that decided to take an oath together, 200 of them. They decided to rebel against God, come down to earth, fornicate with the women, take wives, and have children. They also teach humans magic and how to make weapons of war. Because of this, the earth gets corrupted, and this is when God decides to send a flood. The flood that we know from the Bible, Noah's flood. But the Book of Enoch gets way deeper into what was happening on earth as a result of the Watchers mating with the women, having giant Nephilim babies, and teaching humans all types of incantations. And the Book of Enoch explains the punishment that God hands down to the Watchers and their offspring, the Nephilim. The only thing I'll say right now is that they're still here. Supposedly written by Enoch himself, this book is part of the Apocrypha, the hidden books of the Bible, the ones left out of the canon. It is not recognized by Christians or by the Jewish, but it is recognized by the Ethiopian Orthodox Church. In fact, it is wholly extant only in the Ge'ez language. The only complete text has ever been found in that language, which is Classical Ethiopian. The rest has been found in fragments of Aramaic and Greek in the Dead Sea Scrolls. So we're going to get into the Book of Enoch Chapter 1, which is the Book of the Watchers, and details how they descended on Mount Hermon. We are going to talk about a major archaeological discovery that was made in 1869 at the highest temple of the ancient world on Mount Hermon that just might corroborate the story of the Watchers from the Book of Enoch. I think it's some mind-blowing stuff, and I really wanted to talk about it with all of you and see what you think about all of this. So definitely reach out, leave a comment, smash that like button, leave a review wherever you listen to this podcast. I definitely want to hear your thoughts about this one. I love this stuff. I hope that you do too. Let's dive into the goods. This is the Book of Enoch, the Watchers, and Mount Hermon. All right, let's go through the Book of Enoch, the Watchers, and Mount Hermon. We're going to talk about how the Watchers descended upon that mountain, and they took a pact. They made an oath against God. We'll also talk about what the names of some of them are. There were 200 that came down on Mount Hermon, but only 20 or so are listed in the Book of Enoch. But I did a deep dive a little bit and found some speculation about what some of the other possible names of the Watchers are. But first things first, who the hell is Enoch? Well, Enoch is the seventh of the 10 antediluvian patriarchs. He appears in the book of Genesis. Briefly, specifically, Genesis 5 provides a genealogy of these 10 figures from Adam to Noah. It provides the age at which each fathered the next, and it has the age at which each figure was at their time of death. And it's interesting because Enoch is considered by many to be an exception. It says he did not die. Genesis 5 actually says Enoch walked faithfully with God, then he was no more, because God took him away. And if you really want to go deep into Enoch and go into the Talmud, In mystical Kabbalistic texts, Enoch becomes an angel and turns into what is called Metatron. That is the name that God gives him after his transformation. But before all of that, he got taken up to the heavens and he becomes an intermediary between the Watchers that decided and took an oath against God that they would come down here and mate with the women and have children and take wives. He becomes the messenger between them and God and the other angels that didn't take the oath, like Raphael and Uriel. But even before that, he walked on earth and he was supposedly a righteous man and he had a family and he had some children. He was actually the father of Methuselah, who is the oldest living person in all of the Bible. It says he lived for an outrageous 969 years. So I hope you held on to that Methuselah rookie card. It's probably worth something by now. So Enoch lived 365 years on earth before he was taken up. He did not die. He ascended like Jesus, which I was always told and thought that Jesus was the only one who ever went up and got taken by God without dying. But you learn something new every day, right? But anyway, now we know a little bit about Enoch and where he's mentioned in Genesis. Now, let's go through the book of Enoch and get into what happens with the Watchers, which kicks off in chapter 6 of Enoch. The first part just describes the heavens as being seen by Enoch. He's being shown the heavens for the first time, and it talks about how the earth had become populated and the sons of men had fair and beautiful daughters. And let's read a little bit from chapter 6 of Enoch. And the angels, the sons of heaven, saw them and desired them. And they said to one another, Come, let us choose for ourselves wives from the children of men, and let us beget for ourselves children. So they were looking down at the women, the beautiful daughters of the sons of men, and they were lusting over them, and they wanted to impregnate them. And their leader, whose name was Samyaza, he really wanted to go through with this, but he was worried that the rest of these angels were just blowing smoke up his ass, and that he was going to go through with this, and that it was going to be him alone that was going to suffer the wrath of God. And he said to them, the rest of the angels, this is Samyaza, out of the book of Enoch, he says, I fear that you may not wish this deed to be done, and that I alone will pay for this great sin. So the rest of the angels said, Nah, man, we are on board. We want to do this. We want to fuck the shit out of these daughters of the sons of men, and we want to have wives. So they said back, quote, Let us all swear an oath and bind one another with curses, so not to alter this plan, but to carry out this plan effectively. Then they all swore together, and all bound one another with curses to it. And they were in all 200, and they came down on Ardis, which is the summit of Mount Hermon. And they called the mountain Hermon, because on it they swore and bound one another with curses. This is from chapter 7 of Enoch. And they took wives for themselves, and everyone chose for himself one each. And they began to go into them, and were promiscuous with them. And they taught them charms and spells, and they showed them the cutting of roots and trees. And they became pregnant, and bore large giants. And their height was 3,000 cubits. All right? 3,000 cubits. 1 cubit equals 1.5 feet. So you multiply that by 3,000, and these giants were 4,500 feet tall. And these offspring, 4,500 feet tall offspring, is what we know as the Nephilim, or the Grigori. And Grigori is Greek for the Watchers. This is why I love the Book of Enoch so much, because it elaborates on what the hell was happening when God decided to flood the earth. In the Bible, it talks about the Nephilim and the wickedness on earth, but it doesn't really paint the full picture. And then when you read Enoch, it makes a lot more sense that these angels made an oath and they made a pact to corrupt the seed. That's really what it is. It's the seed of the serpent, according to some people. So that's why I like the Book of Enoch so much, and that may be why it's been left out of the Bible and why it's part of the Apocrypha and considered blasphemous by many. Let's read through the wickedness of the world that's mentioned in Genesis to explain why God chose to flood the earth. When the humans began to increase in number on the earth and the daughters were born to them, the sons of God saw that the daughters of humans were beautiful, and they married any of them they chose. Then the Lord said, My spirit will not contend with the humans forever, for they are mortal. Their days will be 120 years. The Nephilim were on the earth in those days, and also afterward, when the sons of God went to the daughters of humans and had children by them. They were the heroes of old, men of renown. And that is very interesting wording. The heroes of old, men of renown. This seems like the old gods of mythologies, the Titans, the Olympians, the Norse gods. Continuing a little bit more of Genesis, the Lord saw how great the wickedness of the human race had become on earth, and that every inclination of the thoughts of the human heart was only evil all the time. The Lord regretted that he had made human beings on the earth, and his heart was deeply troubled. So the Lord said, I will wipe from the face of the earth the human race I have created, and with them the animals, the birds, and the creatures that move along the ground, for I regret that I have made them. And you'll see the difference in how God looks at this whole situation in the Book of Enoch compared to Genesis, how he seems to place it solely on humans and that humans became so wicked and he regrets even creating them. But when you read Enoch, it's not like that at all. He's super pissed off at what the Watchers have done and he wants to punish them and remove the evils that they created. That's just interesting to me because it always just seems like no matter what, everything gets twisted around and everything falls solely on us, the people. We're just pieces of shit that can't do anything right, and we need to be punished all the time for our sins. So that's all Genesis has to say about this situation. So let's keep going with the Book of Enoch now. And what happened once these Nephilim were born? Enoch chapter 7 reads, These devoured all the toil of men, until men were unable to sustain them, and the giants turned against them in order to devour men. And they began to sin against birds, and against animals, and against reptiles, and against fish, and they devoured one another's flesh, and drank the blood from it. Interesting little bit of blood drinking, little foreshadowing into the future. Maybe adrenochrome. Hey, you can't say that on the internet, but I did, and I think there's something to it. I think it's all connected. Fallen angels, the occult, demons, it's all related. And you'll see what I mean when God hands down his punishment to these watchers and their offspring and what they become afterwards. And you'll see what I mean right here when we get into what these watchers taught men to do. Azazel taught men to make swords and daggers and shields and breastplates, and he showed them the things after these, and the art of making them, bracelets and ornaments, and the art of making up the eyes, and of beautifying the eyelids, and the most precious stones, and all kinds of colored dyes. And the world was changed, and there was great impiety, and much fornication, and they went astray, and all their ways became corrupt. A Mizrak taught all those who cast spells and cut roots. Armaros, the release of spells, and Barakiel, astrologers, and Kokabiel, portents, and Tamiel taught astrology, and Azradel taught the path of the moon. And at the destruction of men they cried out, and their voices reached heaven. So these fallen angels, these watchers, came down and taught men things similar to when people dive into the occult and demonology. They always want something. These demons always teach something. People want knowledge, wisdom given to them by these deities and these entities. And people ask these demons, they invoke them and request them to make changes in their lives for them. It's very similar to what's being told here in Enoch. Let's look at some of these other fallen angels and what they were handing humans at the time. We already talked about Azazel and his swords and knives and shields, but we also have Kokabel, which we talked about too, but I got a little more information on Kokabel or Kakabel. He appears in Jewish folklore as a powerful angel who is in charge of the stars and constellations. He is considered by some to be a holy angel, by others, a fallen one. It is said that he commands 365,000 lesser spirits and teaches astrology to his fellow angels. That's Kokabel. The next one is Sariel. He is known under many names, but this one translates to God's command. Some say he is the angel of death. He is named as the one who retrieved the soul of Moses from Mount Sinai. He is also called by some a prince of the presence and an angel of healing. His name appears in Gnostic amulets, and it is said that when he's invoked, he manifests in the form of an ox. According to the Kabbalah, he is one of the 7 angels that rule the earth. He is also associated with the skies and is in charge of the zodiac sign of Aries and instructs others on the course of the moon. In occult circles, he is one of the 9 angels of the summer equinox and can protect against the evil eye. That is Sariel. The next one, a Mazarak, and he taught all the sorcerers and dividers of roots. The next one, Armors or Armoros, taught the solution of sorcery, taught the resolving of enchantments. The next one, Barkael, he taught the observers of the stars and he taught astrology. Ezekiel taught the knowledge of the clouds, not to be confused with Ezekiel, the prophet. This is Ezekiel. And the next one is Arachiel. He taught the signs of the earth. And Shamsiel taught the signs of the sun. And we have Sariel, who taught the motion of the moon. Akabiel taught signs. Tamiel taught more astronomy. Penumu taught the bitter and the sweet, and he taught the use of ink and paper. Castaja taught the children of men all the wicked smitings of spirits and demons, and the smitings of the embryo in the womb, that it may pass away. And then Gadriel, it says, introduced weapons of war. And that is just from a list that I found in my travels. I'll post a link in the show notes. There's a bunch of information on there about these fallen angels. So while the Watchers were teaching men all of their magic tricks and their astrology and how to make all these weapons of war, their offspring, the Nephilim, were unleashing hell upon the earth, upon each other, ripping each other to pieces, drinking each other's blood. Reminds me of the Clash of the Titans, where they fought each other, the Titans, to rule, to have supremacy on Mount Olympus in Greek mythology. I did show you how they were referred to as heroes of old, the men of renown in Genesis. It's very interesting to think about. So while all this is happening on earth, blood is being shed. The good angels up in heaven, the ones that didn't take the oath, Michael, Gabriel, Suriel, and Uriel, they looked down from heaven and they saw the massive blood that was being shed on the earth and all the iniquity that was being done on the earth. And they said to one another, "Let the devastated earth cry out with the sound of their cries up to the gate of heaven. And now to you, O holy ones of heaven, the souls of men complain, saying, Bring our complaint before the Most High." And that's what they did. They went to the Most High and they told him, which he already knew because he knows everything. And they make that clear that they know that he knows everything, but they're wondering why he hasn't told them that he knows everything and hasn't told them what should be done about this situation. And this is when the Most High, the Great and Holy One, spoke, and he sent an angel to the son of Lamech. And this angel, which is named Arsya, is the angel that is sent to warn Noah about the impending deluge that's going to destroy everything. And he also tells Raphael to bind Azazel by his hands and his feet and throw him into the darkness and split open the desert, which is in the Dudale, and throw him there, and throw on him jagged and sharp stones, and cover him with darkness, and let him stay there forever, and cover his face so that he may not see the light, and so that on the great day of judgment he may be hurled into the fire, and restore the earth which the angels have ruined, and announce the restoration of the earth. For I shall restore the earth so that not all the sons of men shall be destroyed, because of the knowledge which the watchers made known and taught to their sons. And the whole earth has been ruined by the teaching of the works of Azazel, and against him write all sin. And the Lord said to Gabriel, Proceed against the bastards and the reprobates, and against the sons of the fornicators, and destroy the sons of the fornicators and the sons of the watchers from amongst men, and send them out, and send them against one another, and let them destroy themselves in battle, for they will not have length of days. And they will petition you, but the petitioners will gain nothing in respect of them, for they hope for eternal life, and that each of them will live life for 500 years. And the Lord said to Michael, Go inform Samyaza and the others with him, who have associated with the women to corrupt themselves with them in all their uncleanness. When all their sons kill each other, and when they see the destruction of their loved ones, bind them for 70 generations under the hills of the earth, until the day of their judgment and of their consummation, until the judgment, which is for all eternity, is accomplished. And in those days they will lead them to the abyss of fire, in torment, and in prison they will be shut up for all eternity. And then Samyaza will be burnt, and from then on destroyed with them. Together they will be bound until the end of all generations, and destroy all the souls of lust and the sons of the watchers, for they have wronged men. Destroy all wrong from the face of the earth, and every evil work will cease. And the earth will be cleansed from all corruption, and from all sin, and from all wrath, and from all torment, and I will not again send a flood upon it for all generations forever. All right, so God, the Most High, tells his angels, Gabriel and the others, what they need to do to Azazel and Samyaza and the others. And at this part in Enoch chapter 12, this is when Enoch disappears from earth, and it says, none of the sons of men knew where he was hidden, where he was, or what had happened. And all his doings were with the holy ones and with the watchers in his days. And this is where Enoch tells about his meeting with the Most High, the great Lord, the King of eternity. And he sends Enoch to go tell the watchers that they will have on earth neither peace nor forgiveness of sin, for they will not rejoice in their sons. The slaughter of their beloved ones they will see, and over the destruction of their sons they will lament and petition forever, but they will have neither mercy nor peace. So, chapter 13, Enoch goes to Azazel and says those exact words before he goes and speaks to them all together. He says they were afraid, fear, and trembling seized them. They done knew they fucked up this time, and they asked Enoch to write out a petition begging for forgiveness and to take that record of their petition up to the Lord in heaven, because they were not able to, from then on, to speak, and they did not raise their eyes to heaven out of shame for the sins for which they had been condemned. And this petition has each one of these fallen angels' names and what their deeds were and what they did to corrupt men. And they ask for absolution and forbearance. But then Enoch goes down to the waters of Dan, southwest of Hermon, and he reads out the petition, and he fell asleep and had a vision, and it was a vision of wrath. Enoch says, I saw in my sleep what I will now tell with the tongue of flesh and with my breath, which the Great One has given men in the mouth, so that they might speak with it and understand with the heart. As he has created and appointed men to understand the word of knowledge, so he created and appointed me to reprove the watchers, the sons of heaven. And I wrote out your petition, but in my vision, thus it appeared that your petition would not be granted to you. For all the days of eternity and complete judgment has been decreed against you, and you will not have peace. And from now on, you will not ascend into heaven for all eternity, and it has been decreed that you will be bound on earth for all the days of eternity. And this is when Enoch talks about meeting the Most High, and he describes what it's like as he makes his way to the great throne. And Enoch is pretty terrified at this point. He realizes that he's face to face with the Most High, and he's trembling. And God tells him he's a righteous man and to not be scared. He says to come here and hear my voice. And he says, go say to the watchers of heaven who sent you to petition on their behalf, you ought to petition on the behalf of men, not men on behalf of you. See, that's what I was talking about earlier, and the difference in Genesis and why God flooded everything and what God is saying in the book of Enoch. He's saying that the watchers should petition on the behalf of men because of what they did to men, and not men on behalf of you. But in Genesis, it's men and humans that have completely been corrupted. And he talks about how much he regrets the creation of humans. And it's just an interesting contrast to what's being said in Enoch. So I thought it was worth mentioning. And we'll continue on with the wrath of God here. He's pissed. He's telling Enoch all this stuff, and he's questioning the motives of the watchers and the fallen angels. He's asking them why, when you had everything in heaven, would you want to go and do what you did? And he says, now that it's done, he says, and now the giants who were born from body and flesh will be called evil spirits on the earth, and on the earth will be their dwelling. And the evil spirits came out from their flesh, because from above they were created. From the holy watchers was their origin and first foundation. Evil spirits, they will be on earth, and spirits of the evil ones they will be called. And the dwelling of the spirits of heaven is heaven, but the dwelling of the spirits of the earth who are born on earth is earth. And the spirits of the giants do wrong, are corrupt, attack, fight, break on earth, and cause sorrow. And they eat no food, do not thirst, and are not observed. And these spirits will rise against the sons of men and against the women, because they came out of them during the days of slaughter and destruction. So that's the explanation of evil spirits and demons and why they are trying to corrupt humans and get inside our heads and have us invoke them with rituals, with promises of riches, fame, and whatever else. All the temptations that we face here in this flesh. I'm going to read a little bit more here out of chapter 16. And the death of the giants, wherever the spirits have gone out from their bodies, their flesh will be destroyed before the judgment. Thus, they will be destroyed until the day of the great consummation is accomplished, upon the great age, upon the watchers and the impious ones. And now to the watchers who sent you to petition on their behalf, who were formerly in heaven. You were in heaven, but its secrets had not yet been revealed to you, and a worthless mystery you knew. To me, that part right there is saying a lot. I think that part is something worth really paying attention to, that the Most High is telling the watchers that what they know isn't shit after all. You thought you knew some secrets in heaven, but all you knew were some worthless mysteries. It's saying all the mysteries and all the knowledge and wisdom that these watchers believed that they had, it really means nothing. It's all worthless. It seems to me that anybody that wants to contact demons or invoke spirits to try to get things, to try to get knowledge and wisdom, it seems to me that that might all just be worthless. You think you might be getting all this wisdom, but they're probably tricking you. It probably comes with a catch. Who knows? I just thought that was interesting and definitely worth thinking about. So God says heaven's secrets have not yet been revealed to you, and a worthless mystery you knew, and this worthless mystery you made known to women in the hardness of your hearts. And through this mystery, the women and the men cause evil to increase on the earth. Say to them, therefore, you will not have peace. So that's the story of the Watchers and how they made an oath and a pact to corrupt and take wives, have offspring, giant 4,500 feet offspring, and how God punished them and bound them to the earth to suffer until the final judgment, and their offspring, the Nephilim, souls born on earth, will remain on earth. Disembodied spirits, evil spirits. That's why I love the Book of Enoch. It explains a lot. If it's real, if it's true, of course. I don't know. It could be symbolic or just metaphors. It could be just a story. But in 1869, on the summit of Mount Hermon in Israel, British explorer Sir Charles Warren came across a sacred rectangular building made of hewn stone blocks located at Qasar en Tar, the highest temple in the ancient world. In the temple, he found a limestone stele which details an oath made amongst some group of people, or perhaps the Watchers. And a real quick tidbit about Sir Charles Warren, he was the commissioner of the Metropolitan Police in London during the Jack the Ripper investigation. Just a little side note, another conspiracy theory. possibly connected to the Masons and British royalty, perhaps. But that's a different rabbit hole altogether for another episode or two. It's a pretty big rabbit hole to go down, no doubt. But let's go back to Sir Charles Warren's adventures with the Mount Hermon Stele and read what it says. It's written in Greek, and there's been much debate about what it actually says. And there's actually been much debate about what year it was possibly made. But at the British Museum, where it is currently being housed, and it is not available for public viewing at this time, unfortunately, but you can view it online. I'll post a link in the show notes if you want to check it out for yourselves. It says underneath the stele that it's from the 4th to 5th century AD, and it says, quote, hence, by order of the god, those who do not take the oath, unquote. And then it reads, probably an oath before celebrating the mysteries of the temple on the summit of Mount Hermon, where this pillar was found. The god of Mount Hermon was Baal Hermon. Holy shit, right? If that isn't almost exactly what is being talked about in the Book of Enoch, and when Samyaza questions the other Watchers if they're really ride or die with him to go through with this plan, and they say, let's take an oath and be bound by it. And it says it right there in the British Museum. The god of Mount Hermon is Baal Hermon. And Baal was a storm deity worshipped by the Canaanites and also associated with the fertility god Hadad, who was decreed a false god by the Hebrews. And Baal's also known as Beelzebub in Christianity and Islam, and is also known as Zeus in Greek mythology, and also known as Set by the Egyptians. So right there is Zeus, the heroes of old, the men of renown that I talked about earlier, that the Nephilim were known as. And then you have Baal, who's connected to Zeus, connected to Mount Hermon. Baal Hermon was the god of Mount Hermon. And Mount Hermon's a wild place. There's temples that were found over there. And there is Pan's Cave, which is a small little cave with an altar in it that archaeological evidence discovered that many people, children, adults, anyone, was sacrificed to Pan. So Mount Hermon's a pretty intense place. Lots of energies going on there. Lots of holy energies, lots of dark energies. It's supposedly the place that Jesus had his transfiguration. That's purely speculation, though, as nobody is really sure where that happened. It happened on a mountain. A lot of people think that it's Mount Hermon. It's up for debate. And another thing that's up for debate is what that stele that was found on Mount Hermon in 1869 by Sir Charles Warren actually says. I read to you the Greek inscription that's at the British Museum, but Sir Charles Warren and George Nicholsburg put together a translation of their own, and that read, according to the command of the great and holy God, those who take an oath proceed from here. So some of the Greek that's on the stele, the people who have been trying to translate it are having trouble with some of the words. They don't directly translate from Greek to anything. So when this was translated by Warren and Nicholsburg, as well as the British Museum, it comes out different. While diving deep and reading about fallen angels in the Book of Enoch, I came across a website, douglashamp.com. It has a bunch of stuff about Nephilim and fallen angels. And it's pretty interesting because Douglas Hamp did a translation of this stele. He went deep into some of the words that people were having trouble with. And he thinks it's connected to a bull god, which is Baal. So his translation of this stele is similar to what Warren and Nicholsburg came up with, but it reads, according to the command of the great bull god Batios, those swearing an oath in this place go forth. So that's Douglas Hamp's translation from douglashamp.com. Go check it out. It will be in the show notes. And to dive a little bit more into it, this article on douglashamp.com, he connects Batios to Baal, to Melkart, Nergal, Heracles, Enlil, and Marduk. He believes this deity is evil and is connected to Satan or is Satan, and believes that that is the God who commanded those taking the oath to go forth on Mount Hermon. So that's all very interesting, fascinating stuff. I think it's mind blowing. I always thought the Book of Enoch was really interesting. And then I found out about this stele that was found on Mount Hermon in 1869 by Charles Warren. And it just connects it. And all this stuff has just been swirling around in my head. And I just had to share it with all of you because that's what it's all about. And now the next thing I want to talk about is how, these watchers, these Nephilim, have been bound to the earth, disembodied spirits, possibly demons. And there are people out there right now, as we speak, trying to communicate with these entities and trying to invoke them and ask them for things. So I love going on the internet, Reddit, and reading different stories about people and what they're doing out there in the world. It's interesting. So there are people trying to communicate with Samyaza and Azazel, two of the main figures. Well, Samyaza is the leader. Azazel seems to be the second guy in charge. So I found this thread on Reddit, Demonolatry Practices. It's from 2 years ago. Somebody was wondering about Samael, Samyaza, and the Grigoris, which are the Nephilim. Also, does anyone work with Samael or Samyaza and could share some stories? So there were some replies, and one person said, I work regularly with Samael, daily for the most part. And they say, I tend to see Samael as the masculine counterpart of Lilith. He is just as intense, challenging, and sexual, but from the other end of the gender spectrum. And then another person says, I work with Samyaza for Kundalini and energy body work. He has a very loyal nature and extremely respectful of boundaries. I've gotten some revelations from my short time of connecting with him. He's very wise and gentle. And then another person says, I second seeing Samael as the masculine counterpart of Lilith, and I have worked with both. Both have valuable spiritual lessons to each, and both have really helped me in my spiritual healing journey in related but different ways. As the other comments stated, they are both intense and both very sexual. Both are in some ways about facing the darker aspects of existence head on and have a habit of asking their devotees to do the same. They can be a bit much if you're not comfortable with very intense and very powerful energy, and they can be a bit unforgiving if you get lazy or are willfully ignorant. However, they're both very protective and loving presences once you're willing to make an effort to grow as a person. They'll give you plenty of opportunities to provide yourself while also making sure no serious harm comes your way. For me, Lilith is much more closely linked to healing of one's feminine energy, learning magic in the spiritual world, whereas Samael is much more about healing one's masculine energy, taking action in the physical world. They complement each other nicely if you work with both, though they may expect you to do a lot of learning with one before you get access to the other. Lilith had me work with her to heal for 8 to 10 years before I got to work with Samael. Both are very strong when it comes to protecting people spiritually. I think it's fascinating that people are out there working with these things. Well, they think they're working with them. Maybe they really are. But it's fascinating to me that it's happening and people think they're going to get wisdom and knowledge and make their lives better. And maybe so, but maybe it comes with a price. And maybe what they think they're learning is just a bunch of worthless mysteries, just like the Book of Enoch says. Or maybe the Book of Enoch is twisted and inverted just like everything else, and the Watchers are the good guys in the whole story, and they were just trying to help humans and make them better, just like the serpent in the garden with Adam and Eve. Who knows? It's all worth thinking about and keeping an open mind. I have a couple more interesting Reddit threads that I found about these demons, these watchers, people trying to invoke them, work with them for years. As you heard, that person worked with Lilith for like 10 years, and then they were granted access to Samael. We're in the same thread where that person asked about Samael and Samyaza, and another person replies, the Grigori are a huge part of Draconic Cliffoth, because legend has it that some Edomites were giants, part human, part Nephilim. I wanted to talk about this because it brought something to my attention that I've never heard of, and that is the Cliffoth. And what that is, it's from Kabbalistic mysticism. And if you know about that, you know about the Tree of Life. And the Tree of Life is composed of Sephiroth, which represent different realms and entities. So the Cliffoth is the counterpart to the Sephiroth. So unlike the Sephiroth that channel purity and light, the Cliffoth embodies the realms of chaos, impurity, and darkness. See, now that makes a lot of sense to me when I'm reading about these people on Reddit that are communicating with these fallen angels, these Nephilim spirits. It seems like instead of raising your vibration, you're diving into the lower realms, into the abyss, perhaps? Or maybe I'm just being ignorant and this is part of like shadow work, facing the darkest parts of yourself. Carl Jung talked about the shadow, but Nietzsche warned the longer you stare into the abyss, sometimes the abyss starts to stare back at you. But what the hell did he know? He was talking about Ubermensch and the ideal superhuman. And I'm pretty sure he went mad from syphilis, possibly. But yeah, anyway, we're going to stare into the abyss just a little longer. I have one more that I want to read through. This person just has an interesting perspective on the Watchers. You'll see what I mean. Let's read through this. The comments in this post, as well as discussions with practitioners on other sites, have confirmed my experience that the Watchers work as a unit. If you call upon one such as Azazel, you are likely to have one or more of the others invite themselves. And indeed, Samyaza would appear on occasion when I was working with Azazel and ask to share in the offering. My own magical path thus far has not inclined myself to directly work with him, as his area for expertise, what he taught mortals in Enoch, is enchantments and root cutting. Of all the Watchers, he is the one most concerned with earthly witchcraft. Right now, I'm studying occult philosophy and the divination of tarot and runes. So Semyaza and I are ships in the night, but nonetheless, as part of my practice, I honor all the Watchers when I honor Azazel. It continues, the more I study the Book of Enoch, the more I am confounded by how complicated the history of this otherwise insignificant apocrypha is. Mount Hermon was a deeply spiritual location at the time of the story's composition. For centuries, it had been associated with multiple pagan deities from Ishmun and Baal Hadad to Pan and Zeus, with the Greco-Roman colonization of the region. This is why the mountain's name in Semitic means taboo or consecrated. The Watchers swore a binding oath on the mountain because this is where pagans made sacred oaths. This person goes on to say an important note that I never see when discussing demonization is that the Hebrews weren't simply calling pagan gods devils just to slander them like their Christian and Muslim descendants. The Jews were a repeatedly subjugated peoples struggling to maintain their identity, and these were the gods of their colonizers. How do you criticize an empire that gets its legitimacy from the divine right of kings? Ovid sure as hell knew. You call out the gods they claim to get power from as corrupt and unworthy. With monotheism, you need to take it one step further and make them not gods at all, but thieves of the true God's knowledge. When the Book of Enoch relishes the thought of sinners and their false gods being smited and punished, this isn't like American evangelicals vindictively rubbing their hands eagerly at the torture of non believers in the apocalypse. This is a people hoping for justice and the liberation from their oppressors. This is why I believe the gluttonous Nephilim are an allusion to the various pagan kings and emperors. It was a common motif in the art of the Near East, such as Egypt and Mesopotamia, to depict rulers as literally giant in comparison to their subjects. It was also common to claim the most celebrated rulers were children of a god. And what does a colonizer do but greedily gobble up as much resources as they can at the expense of the land's occupants? So that's an interesting take on the Book of Enoch and the Watchers and how they might just symbolically, allegorically represent the pagan kings and emperors that were oppressing the people that wrote the original Book of Enoch. It's definitely something to think about. I think it's interesting. I think it's a good thing to keep an open mind and just take in all the information. I think the story is very fascinating as it is. I think it makes it way more interesting that stele was found in the 1800s that almost corroborates the oath that was taken on Mount Hermon. And I hope that you all find this as fascinating and mind blowing as I do. Definitely let me know. Reach out, comment, like, subscribe, share this with anybody that will listen to you, your friends, your family, strangers. Let me know what you think about this episode by heading over to Spotify, answer the Q&A, or you could hit up YouTube, comment there, and I'll probably respond. Or just shoot me an email, the Brave New World Order Podcast at gmail.com, or DM me on Twitter /X at Brave NWO Podcast. Reach out, share this, help get the word out there. I really appreciate it. Thank you all so much from the bottom of my heart for joining me for this episode. Many more episodes of the Brave New World Order to come. I ain't ever gonna stop. There's way too much interesting stuff out there in this world, in this reality, this realm. So you will be hearing from me very soon. In the meantime, stay positive, question everything, and don't let anybody do the thinking for you. Think for yourself. Much love, everybody. See you soon. Peace out.